Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have tons of information to share with you, so I wanted to start right at 6. Even if anyone is trickling in, it's not a problem. We're going to hold a few more of these. I'm going to call several individuals up who have been involved throughout the process, share maybe mini report or just an update of their experience. And like I said, this is one of many opportunities to just learn and see the current state of the district and ask questions about next steps. I would like to start off by introducing some important individuals. Our entire school board is with us this evening, and I would just like to take a minute and just thank you for your support and encouragement. This united support that you provide me, the treasurer's office, our staff, and all of our teachers, it allows us to do the most important work, and that's the work that influences and impacts our students' growth on a daily basis. So I want to thank our school board. Whenever I call on you, if you don't mind, just give a wave or stand up so everyone can see who you are. School board president, Mrs. Sonia Walker, is with us this evening. Vice President Bill McCartney. Board members, Mrs. Erica Detweiler. Board member Steve Votaw. And board member Bruce Hula. So we also have Josh Predovich and Noah Nicolette with us from Steve Hammond and Paul. Josh, if you would show a hand. Noah. Steve Hammond and Paul are the architects, engineers, and designers hired by the school board to help us through this process. We have a very trusting relationship with this company and Josh specifically. I just want to emphasize, because I know Josh won't say that, but Steve Hammond and Paul, SHP, they don't come to the district and tell administrators and the board, this is what we think Jonathan Alder should look like in the next 3 or 5 or 10 years. We go through these exercises involving our staff, our students, our community, parents, and anyone that's here that wants to be involved. We go through these educational visioning process and different exercises. We have all these pieces of the puzzle of what we want our teaching and learning to look like in the next 3 or 5 or 10 years. Then we go to Josh Predovich and we say, okay, this is what our community, this is what our families, and this is what we want our teaching and learning to look like in the future. And Josh will say, these are the pieces of the puzzle that you need to use and put together to get that way. So Josh is going to wrap things up for us and just kind of dive deep in some of the process here towards the end of the presentation. So Josh, thanks for being with us. CFO, Mr. Mark Ingles, treasurer of the district, is also with us. I'm going to go, if you would, let people know who you are, Mark. Mark Ingles. I'm going to go through just a few accomplishments and highlights that I want to share, and then I'm going to bring Mr. Ingles up, and he's going to go over a few highlights of the financial state of the district. So, I guess I want to lay this foundation. I was hired back in July of 2022, and when you're building a leadership team, there's lots of time it takes to build relationships, build the trust, and staff and teachers to learn about me and learn about them. There's lots of listening and learning and growing. We wanted to implement this one-word focus so that we could really focus all of our work on everything that we do. It's a leadership initiative by an author and leader, John Gordon, the one word, and we chose this one-word focus together back in 2022. And it was a lot about everything that we do, let's just do it together. When we communicate with our students and our families, newsletters, meeting agendas, if we're going to celebrate the work or if we're going to go through a hard time, let's do it together. So that was a lot of our focus on doing the work together and learning how to grow through it. This past year, we voted on a word, elevate. So hopefully you've seen some of the district communication on elevate. I just can't emphasize enough how this word has described the work that has taken place in the 23-24 school year. And I'm confident to say to all of you that we really elevated Alder this last year. And I want to just share some of these things with you. So we opened our doors on August 16th to our students and staff to safer buildings. If you recall, back in the 22-23 school year, we applied for the Ohio K-12 Safety Grant, and from the spring break of 2023 until this past August, when we opened the doors for the 23-24 school year, we used all $460,000 that we were awarded from the state to improve and increase the safety measures across all of our buildings. So we celebrate with our families that you're sending your children to safe schools. We rolled out the new website and phone app this year for improved communications to our families. I can communicate with 2,348 students and their families by the click of my phone. Tyler Jester, if you would, just stand up, let people see who you are. This is the gentleman behind the scenes of improving the communications. I wanted to thank Tyler Jester for elevating the communications department. The new monthly e-newsletter is a great way to showcase all the great work being done from PK to 12th grade. If you aren't subscribed to the e-newsletter, we can make sure that you do that and you reach out to Mr. Jesser, because once a month he's sending out the best visuals, the best stories, just showcasing the great work that's being done by our students and our teachers. This year we opened the second Think Big space at Canaan. We hosted the first ever Space Days in partnership with AWS. We had hundreds of families and students come through, but more importantly, our 5th and 6th graders are benefiting from this space on a daily basis. So thank you. I see Mrs. Byers is here with us, Mrs. Rings, and Principal Walter. They elevated that space for all of our 5th and 6th graders. Academically, we learned that our report card grew significantly across the board from the previous year. Jonathan Alder's overall rating is a 4.5 on a 5-star rating, which exceeds state standards. Our students met or exceeded growth expectations across many grade level key indicators in math and English and science. Our performance index grew from a 92.4 to a 93.5. Jonathan Alder exceeded state standards in closing educational gaps and in graduation rates. The report card demonstrates that Jonathan Alder is providing a quality education to our students at a great value for our families. We implemented advisory periods this year. One building calls it their win period, another building the house system. But this is an opportunity for our staff, our role models, to have conversations with our students outside of the everyday curriculum content. Outside of English, math, science, and social studies, they have a time during the day where they can ask the students, how are they doing, or how can I support you? Or did you get the FAFSA filled out, or college applications in, or I saw that you were missing school yesterday. Is there anything that I can do to help you get caught up? And principals are going to dive deeper into this work next year and really learning about more about student interests and student passions. We had multiple PBIS initiatives that took shape this year. We built upon our partnership with the village administration, and we're planning for the growth together. There's nothing that the village knows that they aren't informing the district on. We're working in partnership, and I just can't tell you enough how that relationship has grown over the last year. We held math literacy and STEM nights at each of our buildings simply for our families to have the opportunity to come in and see what our students are learning, ask questions, and just see how our families can be more involved. We conducted a gifted review, and we're prepared next year with action plans to better serve our gifted population. We conducted an EL audit, which is, Central Office is currently working on the best action steps to have in place so we can better serve our EL population, over 170 EL students. We conducted a curriculum review and finalized a literacy adoption. Mrs. Quick, if you would now turn so people can see who you are and give a little wave. Carla Quick, our assistant superintendent. I just can't thank you enough for your work, and I guess I just want to emphasize so much work, but so little question about why, how you did it, because you were so transparent with all of our stakeholders, so thank you for that. One of the most, powerful initiatives that took place this year was our educational visioning process that took place over 3.5 months this past spring. Very powerful involvement of our students and our staff and our parents. And Carla was a driver with this work, and I'm asking you if you would just share one key significant takeaway from that work.
I'm Carla Quick. I'm a lifelong pioneer, so I went through Jonathan Alder schools, and I graduated from here, and then I sent my daughters to school here at Jonathan Alder. I think what was most powerful for me was watching these three stakeholder groups come together. So our staff, our students, and our families, which I see many of you here that were on and envisioning in that committee on that process. So I think what was exciting for me as both an employee of Jonathan Alder, but also as a resident and a parent, is seeing the alignment between all stakeholder groups. So what our students said was in alignment with what our teachers said, which was also in alignment with what our families want for the future of Jonathan Alder schools. So I could not be more proud or excited to be part of this work and this process. And I just want to thank each of you for coming tonight and being engaged and learning how you might get involved and what you can do to join the process with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Quick. Our high school received the Purple Star designation. This is from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce for our resources and supports we have in place for our military families within the district. And our transportation is now rolling out a new communications tool to elevate the communications to our families when students are en route. And this is something we've been working on for over a year. It was very involved, included all of our bus drivers, transportation supervisor, and all the software and hardware that goes along with that process. But now our families are going to be able to monitor their children when they leave the house in the morning, or when the bus approaches the house in the morning. They can send kids out. They see when they arrive at school in the morning. They see when they leave the buildings in the afternoon, or when they are approaching homes in the afternoon. So, sometimes we have a bus that may break down or may be delayed, and we're communicating with our families, high school-wide or district-wide, to say, hey, there is a delay on one or two of our buses, when we don't need to alarm that many families. This way we can communicate, send a text message just to those families of those kids on that specific bus. So it's a better communications tool for our transportation department. For athletics, our boys basketball, district champs, first time in 45 years. Boys soccer, district champs, first time in school history. Baseball, softball, boys track, district champs. All of our athletes in all of our programs were competing at high levels in the postseason play. Numerous CBC championships across the district this year, the list goes on. And this is what I can confidently say we elevated Alder this year. So just, we appreciate all of our community and our parent support throughout this process. And now I'm just challenging our administration team and our teachers, how can we take it to new levels next year? We're still working on that. So, I'm going to call a couple others. Just wanted to thank you and honestly just share. I'm just grateful to be part of this amazing district and this amazing community. So thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to stick around for questions. I want to call up Mark Ewell's treasurer to give a brief overview. And when he's finished, I'm going to bring up board members, Mr. McCartney, Mr. Botal. They were drivers this past year in the steering committee. They're going to go over a little bit of their experience with this work, preparing the master facility planning process. So, Mr. Ingalls, if you would.
So I'm here to give a brief overview of where we are financially. As you can see in the graph behind me, we are a very strong financial position where our revenues are exceeding our expenditures. It means we're living within our means, and we're not in a period of deficit spending where we're eating into our fund balances. This is from our 5-year forecast, which the board approved in May. It is also available on our website, on the treasurer webpage, the full document. I am not forecasting any deficit spending for the next 3 fiscal years. Starting in fiscal year 27, 28, there is a income tax levy is falling off, and so why the deficit spending starting in those years. I know we're here to talk about the future of our building, so I want to show how we're currently maintaining our assets. So behind me here is where we spent our money in the last fiscal year. So this is July 1 of 22 to June 30 of 2023. We're in the process of closing out the current year. We'll update this as we're done. I want to point out that after instruction, our next highest class of expenditures is on our facilities. We want to make sure that we're retaining the facilities that we currently have, that the taxpayers so generously supported almost 20 years ago. We want these buildings to last for another 20, 30 years. However, recognizing that we will need additional, there's a chance for additional space coming up. But I want to point out that in terms of our finances, we are investing in our current facilities. We're looking to get every inch of life out of them, and we'll continue to do so going forward. And with that, I'd like to invite Mr. Rotan and Mr. McCartney up to give their thoughts on participation on steering committee.
Thanks, Mark.
Hi everyone, thank you for attending tonight. We really appreciate this. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are. And one of the things that I heard when I was running for school board this last time is, and with all the growth, how are we going to maintain the Jonathan Alder culture and the Jonathan Alder values and our community values? And it was really a great question. And the way we need to go about that is to make sure that all of you in our community is very much involved in the planning process. And so what we've tried to do is set up excuse me, a series of committees that are going to be really driven by our community. The first is the steering committee, which is just a smaller committee of the board and administration. But the educational visioning committee actually met, and it was phenomenal. I think they had over, 120 folks. They had students, teachers, community folks, parents, and that process was really powerful in bringing our values and our culture together as we think about the future of our schools. So there was that. We're going to be doing the same thing with the Finance Advisory Committee. We haven't put that together yet, but that's going to really look at the various options and put some numbers behind them and explore what it is we need in terms of a bond package or whatever to pass the levy, to build whatever we decide. The next committee is really the Community Advisory Committee, and that's going to take everything from the Education Visioning Committee and actually try to put that into what a building would look like, or buildings would look like. We're not there yet. We're hoping that is going to start here in the fall, and then by the end of the year, we will have a vision and a plan for what our facilities will look like. Now, the good news is that when we did our campaign to build the high school and the elementary school and make the changes in Canaan and Monroe, is we did not do anything with the junior high. And so we were a segmented district with two different segments. So the beauty of this next campaign is that the state will continue to match at the same level they did 20 years ago. So as we start thinking about this building campaign and what we're going to do, the beauty is the state will match us 54% to our 46%, which is just phenomenal. And so that would be a really excellent thing for us to have as we go to the voters and ask for their support sometime next year. So Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you here.
Thank you.
So the biggest thing, excuse my voice, I've been hoarse for a couple of days now, but the biggest takeaway I've had from my time on the steering committee is as it pertains to the enrollment projections. I've been a lifelong Plain City resident as well, and I remember 30 years ago they were saying, population's going to explode in the next couple of years, and we're going to build new facilities. And as you drive through any subdivision, you see a new house going up every day, and it feels like we are out of space and we're behind the ball. However, we've partnered with Cooperative Strategies, which we've been doing since 2019, and they are specialists in tracking and projecting enrollment growth. It's easy for us to look around and say, well, there's a house, there's got to be 2 or 3 or 4 kids associated with every house. But what they do is they're able to look at the different sizes of houses based on the amount of bedrooms and the typical makeup of the families or the couples that are moving into these, and they're able to project out And so they are taking all the information that they have available from the Village of Plain City as well as Jerome Township, and they put together an enrollment study that says we're actually right on track for where we need to be. And so they'll take their enrollment study. The state with OFCC, they use a company similar to Cooperative Strategies. It's called Future Think, but they do something very similar. And so the two different companies will combine their data, kind of mesh their data and really come up with what they expect enrollment to look like over the next decade. And so the big thing is, the big takeaway is that we are right on track. And so it's easy to think that we're behind the ball, but that's the big takeaway that I want everyone to know is we're right on track. So next I'm going to have Mr. Predovich come up. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you. Yes, sir. Thanks.
Good evening. How's everyone tonight? See everybody. Thank you all for coming out. Appreciate that it's June, it's sunny, and it's beautiful outside, and here you are expressing interest, obviously, in the future of the school district. So we appreciate your time. To that end, it's about 6:22. I'm going to present for about 20 minutes and give you sort of an overview of some of the things that are going to be happening in the rest of the master planning process. And then we're going to have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. So if you see anything up here, feel free to hold a question and we'll try and capture it at the end. I do want to let you know we are taping tonight. So we're going to be able to push this up to the website, and I'll give you the website at the end of the presentation. But what we've been doing throughout this entire planning process is anytime that we make a presentation, whether it's to the board or it's to the steering team or to educational visioning or community advisory team, all those presentations go to the planning website, so you have the ability to kind of follow along if you're not a member of one of those teams or if you're unable to make a meeting. So we'll continue to do that throughout this process. I appreciate Jim's intro. SHP, we pride ourselves on the partnerships that we've been able to work with K-12 school districts and thinking about their future. From our standpoint, we've developed a master planning process, and we really believe, across the back here, there's sort of three legs to a stool of what we think makes good master planning. And we really believe that if we're not successful in being educationally fantastic and financially responsible, and I think the biggest one is the community development supportive concept, and we feel like if we're not successful in all three legs of that stool, that we're not successful in the master planning, right? We're not going to have a successful master plan. And so we really try and focus equally on each one of these, and that's why tonight you've heard Carla talk about the educational visioning, and we'll go into some details on that process. You heard Mark talk about the financial responsibility components of this and the financial advisory team being part of, and then also that community advisory team is that last step, and that's what we're going to be dealing with in the fall. So you've heard a little bit tonight, but I wanted to just kind of highlight and kind of put a point on why we're entering into master planning. So, what's going on right now that's causing us to think about master planning today as opposed to a year, last year or a year into the future. And it has a lot to do with the enrollment, right? I think all of us understand the push of the enrollment and the fact that it's increasing. This component of educational delivery and the fact that delivery is changing. Right now, you offer programs in your high school that weren't even considered 10 years ago, right? They weren't even available to your students 10 years ago because it wasn't even a pathway that we would even be considering sort of teaching our students. So educational delivery is continuing to change. And then that last piece is that facility improvements costs are increasing, right? So it's costing us more and more to maintain our existing buildings, and I think specifically, as you think about the first segment, taking care of everything in the district except for the junior high, where we're continuing to put money in the junior high to maintain it, right? And so as we think about the next segment, the potential for either renovating or replacing the junior high is kind of forefront. So we're going to continue to have these conversations about these three components as we go through the planning process. What you're seeing across the back is kind of our overall master planning timeline. Bill and Steve talked to you a little bit about some of these different teams. You can see the district steering team across the top. We've been meeting, I think, as a group probably for the last 12 to 18 months, and we'll continue to meet throughout this process. We've been going through a process of updating some of the facility and site assessments, so that's what you're seeing in the light blue. You see the educational visioning bar. That process, the meat of that process took place in the spring, but there is a culminating event coming up in September. And we're also working on something called vision test sets. I'll explain that a little bit more as we go through this. We've been kind of pushing on updating the updating the enrollment. Some of that took place in May, and it's going to continue to take place. We need the best enrollment data possible as we go into the master planning, so that we've just got the best numbers that we can use, and so the guys have talked to you about cooperative strategies and future planning, and using those two teams together to really come up with what we think is the best projection. And I'm going to share some of that with you as well. You see financial advisory team meet September through December. The key with the financial advisory team is it's hard to talk about finances until we have master plan options to put numbers to, right? So until we actually develop the master plan options, it's hard for Mark and his team to understand what the impact of that might be. And then the last piece in the red there is the community advisory team, and I'll talk to you about what that team looks like in the master plan development exercises. Our ultimate goal, though, is that we're going to be putting together a final recommendation to the Board of Education. So I've got all the board members here, and I'm staring them in the eye and say, hey, we're coming to you here, but at the end of the year with a recommendation, it's going to be a community developed recommendation that'll be in front of you for consideration. If you take a look at a sort of broader time frame and try and understand what it takes in order to not only plan for facilities, but then also design them and construct them, right now we're on a pathway that would allow the district to at least consider going on the ballot in May of 2025. That would be the earliest opportunity that the district would be able to consider going on the ballot for a potential facility improvement. And so as you take a look at this, we try to be mindful of the fact that these are really, really long timelines, right? And so as we're thinking about what enrollment's going to look like, we need to understand what enrollment's going to be today, but we also need to project it into the future so that if we want a facility to open its doors to be able to meet the needs of future enrollment, you can see if you take a look at the top bar, we're going through this planning in 2024, the potential for a bond issue in 2025 if the district chooses to move forward that quickly. And then ultimately you see that's about a year's worth of designs. That takes you from 25 to 26. And then larger facilities take about 2 years worth of construction. And so as you think about that, we're not going to be walking into one of these new buildings until 2028, right? So we need to understand what the impacts are today, but we also need to project forward to understand what those impacts are going to be that far into the future. And so you can kind of understand, sort of how we fit, again, in this educational vision, community advisory, master planning process here in calendar year 2024 going into 2025. And we try to be mindful of that because I think it's hard for some folks to understand that, we won't be walking in, our students won't be educated in these buildings until after 2028 if we ultimately land on a new facility. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the enrollment projections. So we've mentioned multiple times about this concept of having 2 enrollment specialists. The main meat of the enrollment projection is going to be coming from Future Think, and we've already received a draft from them. I'm going to share that with you tonight. I think it's important to understand how your school district sits in the context of Ohio. For the last, so I've been doing this for about 25 years, and for about the last 15 years, I've been telling school districts in the state of Ohio that we're in decline. Okay, we've been watching folks leave the state of Ohio where they're pulling their students out to move to other states, or we've got just overall population decline. We've been down probably 6 to 7% on a regular basis. And last year, we actually flattened for a year, and now we're starting to decline again. But the decrease is down to about 3%. So you see that first bullet point. And if you look in the state, there are only 5 counties that are actually seeing an increase. Okay, and so as we look around and see the different counties throughout the state, anybody that you see in green here behind me is a county that's seeing an increase of population. Okay, and so there are only 5 counties total. Everybody else is either flat or declining or significantly declining. So if you take a look at the sort of northeast of the state where those sort of rust-colored counties are, those folks are seeing decline in the average of 20 to 25% decline. And so what we're seeing is that we're seeing a push towards central Ohio, right? Folks are moving from more rural areas of the state and moving towards central Ohio. And you're seeing that there's still a little bit of a push in Cincinnati, and for a while there was a little bit of push in sort of the Cleveland and Akron areas, but that's actually gone down. So Madison County is actually projected to decline in population. I know that seems counter, but that's actually what we're seeing as far as the projection is concerned, by about 5.2%. There are 3 districts in the county, so what that tells you is if Jonathan Alder is seeing an increase in student population and we're seeing the other school districts see a decrease in population, that means you become a school of choice, right? The folks are moving from other school districts to come into your school district, and we're seeing more and more of that. And so we're also seeing, obviously, in Union County, which makes up a very small portion of your district, they're actually projected to be up by about 1.7%, which we would consider that to be almost flat. The last couple of things I'd point out to you is the Ohio birth counts and the Ohio public school enrollment numbers are still continuing to decline. They flattened there for about a year, and now they're continuing to go down. So all of this is kind of factored in so that as we look at the state overall, we're still seeing decrease, but your school district is seeing increase. So behind me is the enrollment projection that's been run. This is a 10-year enrollment projection. So FutureThink takes the last 10 years of your enrollment and they project forward another 10 years to try and determine what the impact of future enrollment is going to be on your district. And if you take a look, the numbers I take a look at are the ones that are in that red box there. So your actuals for the 23-24 school year had you just a little bit over 2,200 students. And we're projected, if we go out 10 years to 2033, 2034, we're projected to go up to about 2,500 students, just a little bit more than 2,500 students. So that's roughly about a 293 student increase, and so that's roughly about 13%. So if the county's down 5% and you're up 13%, that means that folks are moving into the district. The red line that's there, the reason that I put that there is what I like to look at when I look at these enrollment projections is anything that's north and to the right of that red line is really a projection, okay? So if you think about it, if we look at our preschool and our kindergarten numbers, and we look at those from the 23-24 school year, everything that's right of that ultimately has been projected. Those numbers are projected numbers. And so you can see what happens to your student populations as the projections start to take hold. And what I would tell you is that we have some large class sizes in the school that run through the school district currently that we've got some 190, 200 student class sizes that are a little bit larger than our typical class size. And so those are causing those projections as we look forward to those, causing those numbers to go up. And so we'll be looking at these, we'll be updating them to try and use the best information that we can moving forward. But this becomes the foundational information as we proceed forward in the master plan. The other piece of information, and the guys have mentioned that we've been in contact with the village. We've talked at length about what the village is seeing as far as development is concerned. And I can tell you right now, you guys are taking a look at this. This information is out of date. It was probably out of date 5 minutes after they presented it, right? Because all of this development just continues to change, right? As developers come online and have housing developments that they are projecting to move forward with, other housing developments fall off, and so there's a number of different moving components here as we look at this. But effectively, these were sort of the developments that we were looking at, and this information is actually out of date again from probably spring this year or fall of last year as we look at these numbers. The main thing that I've asked the school district to kind of focus on is we see that the next 10 years have this kind of on an increase of about 13%. As we're looking at housing developments, if you see a new housing development, when it comes online, it takes roughly 5 to 7 years for a housing development to sort of be fully realized. So as they start to build the housing development, as folks start to move in, if these housing developments are being marketed to first-time home buyers or first-time families, You know, it's usually 4 or 5 years before we start to see the kids come out of those housing developments. And then it's a few years after that before they really hit the school district. The reason that I say that is we just looked at a 10-year enrollment projection, and we've got housing developments that are opening up, you know, just within half a mile of the school district. Those kids aren't going to hit the school district for another 7, 8 to 10 years. And so those kids, excuse me, at this point aren't even showing up in our projection yet. And so what's important to understand is that the enrollment projection specialists are looking at these developments that have already been established. They're starting to see kids come out of those developments. And I keep using the analogy of a two-stage rocket. We're ultimately seeing this sort of 13% increase over the next 10 years. And then if the developments that we see up here come to pass, there's going to be a second stage to the rocket. And so we're going to have to appreciate that and understand that as we monitor enrollment over the next 10 years and then project forward even past that. Now, what I'll tell you is most enrollment projection specialists don't want to go out further than 10 years because so many things can change, right? It's so difficult to go out 10 years, let alone to go out 20. But we're going to continue to monitor this information as well. So it's again, there's a lot of moving pieces, and we're going to use the best information that we have going into the fall to try and make the best decisions possible. The last thing I would show you is, this is a graphic that you're going to start to see a lot out of our master planning. Effectively, this is a diagram that we use to sort of talk about school facilities. And so up here, what you're seeing is the current district configuration. We've got our 2 elementary schools, which both are preschool for elementary schools. We've got Canaan Middle School, which is a 5-6 building. We've got the junior high, which is a 7-8 building, and obviously this facility, which is 9-12. When we start looking at different master plan options, you're going to see different diagrams of this when we start to think about different configurations. And so we're going to investigate as many master plan options as necessary to make sure that we feel like we've just taken a look at what the best opportunities are for the district in the future. And we may look at some master plan options that look at reconfiguring these facilities, moving grades out of these buildings. We might consider master plan options that look at these facilities having different grade configurations. And so you're going to see a lot of these different sort of diagrams pop up. And so I'm just kind of using this as a primer. And we'll be looking at the district buildings' current capacities and what they can currently hold, and what that enrollment projection is telling us about when they're going to be effectively above capacity. So you're going to start to see this diagram a lot. So I want to jump back to the master planning process real quick. And just, when you saw the calendar, where we are right now, we're in this educational visioning and vision test it. Effectively, the educational visioning piece took place. Again, the majority of that work took place in the spring. I want to show you just real quickly what that educational visioning process sort of looked like. And so the reason that we believe strongly in educational visioning and dovetailing with master planning, we really want to work on the work that the district has done to date, but we're also really focused on what the shifts are in teaching and learning. And we really believe that the best master plans come out of us understanding how the district is going to operate for the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And again, just trying to appreciate what changes are coming that are going to affect the facilities. So this is a little graphic that sort of shows the first 3 steps that we've gone through. So Carla talked to you a little bit about these different groups, stakeholder groups that met. And so for each one of these, we would have a community group, we would have a teacher group, and a student group. And what I always like to sort of mention to the teams is that it's amazing how open-minded and how forward-thinking and how creative the student groups are. Because what I always love about this process, so Jeff and Carrie and Kinsey from our office run these processes. What they love to do is they love to run the same exercises for all 3 groups, and then the students come up with all these great ideas, right? They just think their minds are open and free. You know, we have the community group, there's adults, and we're thinking about boxes, and we're thinking about classrooms and these kinds of things. And the kids are like, oh, all the walls are round, right? We're going to do round walls, and we're going to have skylights everywhere, we're going to do, you know, the slides in every building, and all these kinds of things, right? And so what's great is you go through these first round of meetings, and then you take the student output of their meeting, and you take that to the community group and shame them, right? And you basically say, hey, look, these guys are thinking, you know, they're thinking outside the box. They're really having fun. And so each one of the groups goes through the same, basically the same exercises. And so we do that over the course of the 3 meetings, and then we're going to have a culminating event. And the culminating event is going to take place in September, and that's where we're going to bring all 3 of the teams together so they can see all the output from everybody's group. And so some of the exercises that they've been doing have been focused on trying to understand sort of essential skills was the first one. So it's this DOT exercise where we really talk about what do we do well today and what do we want to do well in 10 years, right? In this concept of, what's education going to look like in the next 10 years. And then activities. What will we see? If we walked into a school that was doing these things that we want to do well, what would it look like? What would it look like if we walked into a classroom and we were doing these things that we hope to be doing educationally and doing them well in the next 10 years? What would that look like? And so you can see, the community groups sort of thinking through these ideas. They also ran a series of visual vocabulary exercises, and we're going to share all that after the culminating event. But effectively put a bunch of images of all kinds of different sort of learning environments, everything from elementary school learning environments to workforce learning environments, and what's it look like when you're in a creative space in a corporation. What's that feel like? And what of these things do you see that really appeal to you? You can see that the students are really active in this exercise. We talk a lot about stop signs. What are the things in the future that we have concerns about? So again, if we want to be a forward-thinking district about our educational delivery, what are the things that are going to potentially stop us from being able to be successful, and how do we work around those stop signs? And so that was another exercise that each of the groups did. And so all of this stuff is going to be sort of packaged together along with this concept of a vision test bit, which we're going to talk more about after the culminating event. The culminating event is going to take place on September 4th. I think it's somebody's birthday. I can't remember who it is. So there might be cake at that event. Okay, all right, we'll work on the cake. So we're looking forward to that. It's going to be really exciting. And then what I'd like to do is not to steal their thunder for the culminating event, but we'll have another community presentation, and we'll also present to the board all of the outcome of the educational vision process. So I'm really excited for that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So for my last 4 minutes, I'd like to talk a little bit more about community advisory team and master plan development. Effectively, I always liken the community advisory team master plan development process to a sort of a funnel. I want to take as many great ideas about master plan options and kind of funnel those down. And so we might start with 10 or 15 different ideas and try and get those down to the 4 or 5 ideas that are really successful and really strong. And then ultimately get those down to the best option, right? And so you can see sort of some of the ways that we do that is, sort of defining the need, developing the options, refining the options, testing the options. It's going through this process to really kind of come up with what we think might be the best master plan for your district moving forward, understanding that these changes affect you for the next 40 or 50 years. And so, much like you saw in the educational visioning, we're going to do something similar in the community advisory team process where we have all these different ideas, and we're going to work with the teams and run through a series of exercises. And ultimately, this process should be fun, right? I mean, if it's not a fun process, then we're not going to enjoy it. We're not going to get the benefit out of it. And so, what we try to do is come up with as many options as possible. This is kind of a pros and cons option exercise that we do, where we ask folks to, give us the strengths and the weaknesses of any of the master plan options. So we're not just talking about cost, right? Cost is important. We saw, that being financially responsible is one of our key tenets of master planning. But we also want to understand the strengths and weaknesses, both from an educational delivery standpoint, from a community standpoint. So that's what the exercises are designed to do. And we will do concept testing, and we will ultimately do some community surveying. Typically we do 2 types of community surveying. One of them is kind of a high-level survey where we might send something out through the social media platforms and ask folks to kind of respond that way. We also have a more targeted community survey process that we use that is a kind of a third-party process where they actually go out and do random sampling. And so sometimes if we feel like we need to get into more depth on our community-wide surveys, we will go out to that third party and ask them to really do some random sampling once we get down to those sort of 4 or 5 most successful master plan actions. So our ultimate goal, again, is to get to that final recommendation to the board. And so we're going to continue through this transparent process, and we believe that the way to make this master planning process successful is to make sure that the community is as involved as they can be. So you've always had the opportunity to go to our website, and you've always had the opportunity to kind of keep up with the process, even if you're ultimately not on one of the teams. So we're really encouraged by the support that we've seen so far, and we hope to continue the excitement and keep building to the most successful master plan that we can put in front of the board. So with that, I'll turn things back over to Jim. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think is our website, no, our website's not up there. Our website is ldalder.com. It's on an earlier slide that we can bring back up if we need to. There's a QR code there. And Jim?
Let's open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Josh. Perfect.
Did a great job.
Thank you.
Hey, Josh, can you just put it on that slide?
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah.
I think he's trying to get to it.
I had a question.
Please.
I just was curious on your slide that had the current district configuration. You had numbers on there, one was P and one was C. What are those? Because they were awfully close together. I don't know if that's population and.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What we're trying to do is we are trying to keep an eye on enrollment projection and take a look at projected versus capacity. And so as we're looking at that, we think, based on our first blush understanding of what we're seeing from the enrollment, is that 10-year projection is going to show that all of our facilities are going to be at capacity at the end of that 10-year projection. And so not only do we need to consider replacing the junior high, renovate or replace, I want to make sure that I'm consistent about that, but renovating the junior high is an option, replacing the junior high is an option. But not only are we going to be looking at that 7-8 component, we're also going to be looking at all the other facilities because, again, using that analogy of the two-stage rocket, if at the end of 10 years we're at capacity, and we know that it takes a year's worth of master planning, a year's worth of design, and 2 years worth of construction, if we're at capacity at year 10 and it's year 14 before we're able to build a new facility and get into a new facility, we better have a strategy in place here, right, before we get to here. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
I feel like the numbers that you had up there were current numbers for the P and the C.
Yeah, they should be. And again, let me see if I get to that slide. Somewhere in there. There. Yeah. So if you take a look at the projected, and then the other numbers that are current. And so these would have been. And I want to be very clear. One thing I want to be crystal clear about. These are OFCC's understanding of what their capacities are at your facilities. Okay, that's a different concept than potentially how you're using the facilities today. And so ultimately, what they're looking at is they're looking at class sizes of 25 to 1, and they're also looking at all of your classroom space basically being at 100% utilization. And so, for instance, when you look at the high school is showing up at 689 and 690. So you would say, okay, the commission is saying we're at capacity of that building. But what they're not considering is, that the district office is taking up 3 classrooms. We also know that from a utilization standpoint, you might be utilizing the building differently than the state is looking at it from their capacity standpoint. And so one of the things that we'll be looking at in the master planning is how do we realize that as part of the auction that we look at.
But the P is projected in 10 years.
That's correct. The P is projected in 10 years, the C is current capacity. And again, that's OFCC's understanding of your capacity. Okay. And so if you look at those numbers, you're going to be at or above capacity at the end of that 10-year projection. So we've really got to focus in on that. It's going to be a hard topic as part of our master planning conversations. Other questions? Yes, sir.
The slide was the master timeline. January and February, you did facility assessments. Who did the district use for those assessments?
SAP performed that work. So we also get a facility assessment from the OFCC. They produce a facility assessment, and then we also we get into a little bit more detail than they do. And so that'll be information that we'll be sharing as part of the community advisory team. I think our main goal is to understand what the cost of maintaining your existing facilities is going to be over the next 10 years. I think it's important that the community advisory team understand that, and the community at large, honestly. There a lot of times we'll get questions that, well, why doesn't the district just go out and buy a new 7-8 building? Why don't they just go out and do that on their own? And I think it's important that everybody understands that just because we're focused on new facilities, we can't forget what it takes to maintain our existing facilities, right? And so you saw Mark's projection of, that piece of the pie, right? That piece of the pie is going to get smaller. It's going to continue at that rate or get larger as the facilities get older. And so that's what we try to stay focused on. Other questions? Where are you at with information? Please.
I was just curious, you mentioned you might do random sampling of the community. And I was unclear if that was if needed or that's definitely a part of the process. And either way, I guess my question is that random sampling parents who are, is that community members who currently have kids in the schools, or is that the community at large? Because I know on the visioning team, I'm pretty sure we had some community members who have had had students in the past who don't have current students. And so, I mean, I'm asking because as a parent of little ones, when there was stuff to talk about the junior high or high school, it just felt, like I don't really know what to say because I don't have that experience yet. So I'm just wondering who's feeding into that sampling.
That's a great question. Ultimately, it's going to come down to what it is we're trying to ask, right? I mean, ultimately. So we've worked in the past with a company called Alder, and they're experts at going out to communities and doing that kind of random polling. And it ultimately comes down to sort of what information we're trying to get to. If we're trying to investigate, say we've got 4 or 5 master plan options and we want to investigate that, if those master plan options are more focused on the upper grades, then we would ask Fallon to say, okay, find us random sampling that asks the question to folks that would be impacted by the upper grades. If it's elementary school, then we might do that. If it's overall, right, just overall, we're asking sort of general broad-based questions, then it might be a community survey that talks to everybody, retirees and folks that don't have kids in the district and folks that do and everything in between. So it really comes down to the questions that we ask. Okay. It's a good question. I think I have one in the back and I'll come back to you. Sir, did you have a question?
Oh, no.
Okay. That's all right. Please.
Doing all this great input and then we're getting all this information. You said at the beginning, the state's going to help us out with 54%. How much is this really going to help in the input that? Because if the state's going to dictate what the building's going to be here, we have all these great visions, but they're going to have limitations on what we can put in these buildings and how it wants to be. And I'm going back to when we had the elementary school, the new one. It was almost too small when we built it. And everyone here knew that, but the state didn't listen to the numbers that were there. How do we make sure that that's not going to happen again?
It's a good question. I think what I would say, two answers to your question. One is, if you're in the state's program and you're following the state's rules, right? If you're working with OFCC, you're following their rules. And so ultimately, the one thing I would say is that if you look at the school districts, they're up to, I think, 360 school districts that they work with in the state. I think one of the great things is that if you look at any of the buildings in the state, even though they're all following these big, thick design manuals, none of them look the same, right? If you go to a school district in central Ohio and you go to a school district in northern Ohio, the facilities look completely different. And I hope that is an expression of the communities that designed them and went through the process with them. But as far as the concerns about the capacity and their understanding of capacity versus what's actual for the district, there are some things that the district has had to sort of work with in regard to having, a district geography that you ultimately have to appreciate, right? So we've got Monroe, we've got Plain City Elementary, and ultimately Monroe is, surrounded by, what I would call a very sparse population density, right? And then we've got Plain City Elementary, which ultimately, when Plain City Elementary was initially built, was becoming more populated and has continued to grow and is now, probably in the middle of the population growth in the northeast side of the district, right? And so ultimately the challenge comes down to the district to say, okay, am I going to take a student that lives 15 feet from Plain City Elementary and am I going to bus them to Monroe, right? That's not an OFCC problem, that's ultimately a district consideration issue. And so that's something we're definitely going to talk about because the overall makeup of the district, you're exactly right. The commission's that's not something they respond to, right? They're looking strictly at square footage and student equity and those kinds of things to think about how to make facilities work. We as a team, as a community, need to think about what are the right locations for those buildings. How do we make sure that we take some of that impact off of Plain City Elementary with whatever the future master plan option is, right? It might be pulling a grade out of that building, it might be building, the district had the foresight, the board had the foresight to purchase property at the Darby Station area. That might be a consideration. I think there are a number of ways for us to look at that. But it's a great question that's going to have to be answered.
Josh,
Yeah, please.
do you want to talk about L? Because I
Certainly,
think that's
yeah.
an important component.
Yeah, it is definitely. One of the things that we didn't get into detail on with the OFCC slides is the different programs. So the district went through a segment in what's called the classroom assistance, CFAP. It's a classroom facility assistance program that the district was involved in for the last round of facilities improvements. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to enter a different program, which is called the Expedited Local Partnership Program. And effectively what that allows the district to do is to spend their money first to whatever facility improvement that they want to look at, and then bank credit for what will be their next segment. And so ultimately what that will allow us to do is we can be a little bit more forward thinking in this segment because we have a little bit more ability to control what that segment looks like. So the district could choose, ultimately, they could choose a master plan option that might look to accommodate a little bit more growth than what the commission might say, hey, we're only going to co-fund this little piece, right? And so I think some of the master plan options that we're going to need to look at are master plan options that do think about growth, that lead us to what might be the next round of facility improvements when that's necessary. But we have a little bit more latitude here with the program that we're going to be in this time around while we're waiting for the commission to come back with what will be the sort of final segment.
However,
Because that last, when you're looking at the projections that's going on, if you look where we're at, Union County, Franklin County, Delaware, all those are increasing, and that's not going to stop. I mean, especially with everything that's coming in and building, those projections you had for Plain City, those are like last fall. And so, I mean, I like that as you said, that we may have to look at master plans that build beyond what the state allows. Hopefully they will listen. That's the hard part, I think, because we know, and that's what happens. The state doesn't, people here, they don't know what's going on here. And so all they see is, like you said, the numbers and the square footage.
Sure.
And hopefully, that is hopefully that where you can bank it. I mean, in my field, they do that with bridges with county engineers. They can build a bridge and they can bank that money towards a bigger bridge in the future if they meet certain standards. And it sounds like they're trying to use some capabilities now.
which is exactly, whatever the next project that we do, the district is gonna fund 100% of it, right? So you asked how much it's gonna cost. It's gonna cost 100%. However, we'll bank 54% state credit on the next project. And that money will go towards our 46% share.
Other questions? Okay. Oh, 7 o'clock on the dot.
Nice job, So, thank you for joining us this evening. You can see that our hands are full, but I promise you that the board is open and welcomes you to participate throughout this process. From the administration standpoint, we'll be as transparent as we can and provide as many opportunities as the community and families and want. And I think the most important thing is, for the next year, as we're doing this work, we're going to involve the most important people, and that's you, our families, and our students, and our staff. So thanks again for being with us this evening. And you can reach out to us. Our contacts on the website, but also if you go to elevatealder.com, you can submit a question, and we'll get back to you within a day or two. Thanks again for joining us.